It's just one of those days where you don't.
Hey everyone, welcome back to In the Alley. Glad you guys are back for another video. Team preview number 6, Jacksonville Sharks time. Starting with the J's and moving on down the alphabet. This was a little bit of a learning curve for Jacksonville compared to the other leagues that they have been in. Not to say they haven't had kind of bad or down seasons in other leagues like the NAL or the AFL, but this one was kind of a little bit of a learning curve. Myself included, thought this team would just kind of come in here and run roughshod over them, and they didn't. So 5-11, let's go take a look at that team information, and we will see if we have a better season in store for the Jacksonville Sharks. All right, popping up here with the team information. Not a lot indoor football-wise when it comes to the Jacksonville Sharks, but if you are a fan of both indoor or arena, or if you've just been around the game, either style, for a long time, you know that the Jacksonville Sharks are a mainstay and have been since 2010. Location, obviously, Jacksonville, Florida. They play at the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena with a capacity of 13,011 people. Their head coach is Jason Gibson. And while they do not claim any indoor football championships, they have plenty of trophies and hardware. They will tell you. Their fan base is rabid. Their fan base is just right up there with Arizona. They have some diehard fans. Simple as that. I mean, that's something I admire about this team. They have a very passionate fan base. Some fair weather fan bases out there throughout the league, but Jacksonville brings it. So kudos to you guys. Last 5 years, just based in the indoor football league. Again, I know they played in the NAL, but 5-11, they didn't qualify. Like I said, kind of a steep learning curve for them. Kind of thought that they would bring in some guys from the NAL and it would be a smoother transition, but didn't turn out to be. They had to shuffle the roster quite a bit, and they were able to make it 5-11. They came on strong there at the end of the season. They were able to make some teams pay there towards the end of the season. So here's hoping that 2025 Jacksonville can switch those numbers around. So let's go take a look at that schedule, roster, everything else with the preview. All right, so schedule popping up here for the Jacksonville Sharks, and it's a fairly decent schedule. They've got some very winnable games on this schedule. They have to start off with Massachusetts, though. The good news is Massachusetts, they're kind of going through their own little roster turnover right now. I think Jacksonville could be ripe for the picking when it comes to the upset there to start the game or start the season. We'll find out. Obviously, we're not ready for that stuff yet, but you get one game down, then you get a bye week, 5 games, bye week, and then what, 7 games? Yeah, 7 games, bye week, 3 games. So Jacksonville does play 4 different Western Conference opponents. That's kind of cool to think about. I know I talked a little bit about yesterday, kind of balancing it out, but kudos to Jacksonville for willing to travel and actually have some home games with some Western Conference opponents. So that's pretty cool for Jacksonville. Something that didn't happen last year either towards the bottom of their schedule. They did not play their NAL counterpart last season. San Antonio and Jacksonville came in at the same time last year. They didn't play. That changes this year, July 12th. Those two teams will play in Jacksonville. Overall, though, it's nicely spaced out for the most part. You kind of get half of your season, quote-unquote, in between bye weeks 2 and 3. You get a home and home against Fishers. I know I talked about that in the Fishers preview. But ultimately, if Jacksonville is up to snuff, we have to taper our expectations a little bit here. But if they are up to snuff, this team is hopefully what we all thought they would be last season. They have a lot of returning players from last year to this year, some indoor experience. I remember, we'll talk. Well, I guess we'll just save this for the roster stuff because I don't want to bore you with all of that stuff here. I'll do it with the roster talk, but mainly for the schedule. It's cliche, but start off hot. Vegas, they seem to be on the come up. Very good season last year. Obviously, MVP quarterback is back. Tucson, we'll see what they're capable of. If you can catch Massachusetts again, Quad City, Iowa. I mean, Jacksonville has a good opportunity to have possibly 1 or 2 losses going into almost the midway point of the season. So we'll see. And then that comes with Fishers. How does Fishers adapt? And go from there. Massachusetts again, Arizona, always a tough game. And then you kind of get towards the bottom half of that schedule. Ultimately, if Jacksonville can build that chemistry quick, use it all throughout the rest of the season, you're looking at double-digit wins, which is what everyone thought they would do last season. Here's hoping they do it this year. So let's go take a look at the roster, what they've pieced together, players they've signed, re-signed, all of that stuff. All right, roster popping up here. Some good, some questions. Now, first things first, we're going to talk offense, and what I want to talk about here is they have revamped their entire offense. What I was going to say in the previous segment was I remember watching Inside the Sharks podcast with Jason Gibson last season on how they're going to adapt to the indoor football league, and he said something along the lines of, well, we're getting a lot of local guys, a lot of local Florida talent, Georgia talent, stuff like that, guys that want to kind of stay home. And they did sign quite a bit of players from the NAL, and they started out really slow. You know, what were they, 0-6, 0-7, something like that, before they ended up getting their first win? It was kind of a brutal watch, I'll be brutally honest with you. But going into this season, that's out the window. Look at this offense, the experience they have on offense, and then you can look at the lack of experience they have on defense. That's the question. Let's start with the quarterback. Caleb Barker is back. He is a national champion with Northern Arizona. He did come on as of late, and he played pretty well. Here's the big one. Jimmy Robinson. He's third right there on the running back list. Jimmy Robinson. You got him. From Massachusetts, from your rival. They did sign Edward Vander. They did re-sign Tyler King, so you've got a very stacked running back room. Very, very stacked. Edward Vander was the leading receiver for Quad City last year. So can he slot out in the wide receiver position? He's very, very good at catching the ball. So more of that. They'll probably be running the ball. Caleb Barker, again, dual threat style quarterback. Re-signed 2 players from the wide receiving core last year. Jaden Stoshak is back along with Marquise McLean. But then they went out. They traded for Karan Ashley. They signed Kentrez Bell after Sioux Falls went dormant. And they got Daniel Kroll, who has spent some time with Bay Area and Duke City as of last season. Well, Bay Area a few seasons ago. Add on top of that a couple of rookies, Jamal Couch, Jaden Wilson, Mike Cornelius Jr., and Vance Bennett, who they just signed from their tryout as of last week, if I'm not mistaken, if I read that correctly. So some rookies right there. It's going to be tough to kind of break through that mold if they plan on keeping any of those 5 guys that had any indoor experience from last season. Offensive line, Leon Brown and Dominic Jackson return, and they do get Javian Caldwell, I think it's Javian Caldwell, from Sioux Falls Storm. At the very bottom, though, they do have PJ Braun. He is an offensive defensive lineman hybrid, and he was with Arizona last year, but I believe he was on injured reserve all of last season, if I'm not mistaken. So not necessarily talent when it comes, or experience when it comes to like getting on the field, but he was with Arizona, so kind of a tweener with that. Deontay Graham, Chaz Neal, and Eric Harris round out the offensive line. That's some pretty good size there as well when you look at that offensive line. Chaz Neal from Florida Atlantic, 6'8", 330. It's a big boy. Defensively, this is where it's going to get a little tricky. Rashawn Wilkins is re-signed. They do get Noah Lyles from the Tulsa Oilers, and they do sign Rick DeBreu from the Vegas Nighthawks. Add in Chris Rice and Devin Phillips on the defensive line. That looks all right. Here's where it gets a little tricky. No experience whatsoever except for Omari Smith in the secondary. We'll talk about that in a second. But Chance Rodriguez, Hayden Hatcher, Ronald Marlborough, and Ja'Cory Johns for the linebacker position. They kind of went through different linebackers last year, whether I think they had Xavier Peters, they had Chase Lassiter, and there were a couple of others that they went through. Sir Zion Dance with Green Bay now, and maybe 1 or 2 more. But they went through quite a few different linebackers. I think they even put like a defensive back like Richie Coffey at a linebacker spot sometime last season as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was kind of a point of contention right here. They're doing their due diligence right there. I live in Kansas, so it's nice to see Chance Rodriguez and Hayden Hatcher from, the Rock Chalk State. So nice to see that there. Omari Smith, I don't think played a single snap, but he was on the roster late last season for Jacksonville, so maybe he has a little bit of practice, a little bit of experience. Other than that, Jordan Whitley, Corey Kelly, John Huggins, Tyrese Ross, Malik Fleming, Devin Washington, Kieran Kinsler, and Malik Jones. Now, this was kind of a revolving door for their secondary as well, whether it was Harrison Poole, Caleb Ham, Jabari Gorman, Richie Coffey, Dejon Warren. I mean, they went through defensive backs like crazy. I mean, even the wide receivers with Solomon. I'm blanking on his last name. Solomon line. Anyway, Tamari and Terry, and anyone else. I mean, they still had Stoshak and McLean, but regardless, like, this roster went through so much turnover last season, just trying to see what could stick. My hope here is whatever you get out of this camp, if you are Jacksonville, it sticks. That's what I'm hoping for. You want that consistency. They went through a lot of quarterbacks too, so hopefully they can have the consistency be key for them this season. And if it is, they're going to win quite a few games. So, non-active, let's just touch on that. Javaris Davis is over to the CFL. Xavier Peters, Notori Johnson, Tyler Clark, Tequillo Moore, and Blaise Brown are refusing to report. Bryant Nolan Jr. is on the PUP list, so that could be another offensive lineman to add some depth there for them. He did play last season for them. Notori Johnson did play for the Frisco Fighters a few seasons ago on the non-active roster, so we'll see if he reports. If he doesn't, we don't know. So let's go take a look at some of those key re-signings, key departures, and we'll go take a look at 3 questions. All right, key signings, re-signings, key departures. First up, we're going to talk the quarterback position. Caleb Barker. He comes in only playing 4 games last year, 538 yards in 4 games, so that's easily over 100 yards a game, 14 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions, 37 rushing attempts, 163 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns. There you go. There's your quarterback. Simple as that, man. I mean, you need him to be healthy, clearly. Just looking at the stats of last season, N'Kosi Perry, Fred Payton, Connor Blunt, Eddie Brill, Aaron Aiken, and Caleb Barker. You went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks last year. Now, not all of them started, but still, playing through 6 quarterbacks in a single season, you only play 16 games. So, and Caleb Barker accounted for 4 of them. So, having that stability at quarterback is going to go a long way. Simple as that. And Caleb Barker is really consistent. Look at those numbers. Only 2 interceptions in 4 games. You're going to throw picks, but he didn't throw a lot of them. So, you have that. Offense can go with that. Simple. Elephant in the room, Jimmy Robinson. What accolades can you say for Jimmy Robinson? First team all IFL for the running back position, 1,148 yards, 248 attempts, 32 rushing touchdowns, 62 receptions, 479 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns through the air, 55 kick returns, 1,153 return yards, and 1 touchdown. He is him. He is him. I mean, at some point last season, he was making a name for himself for MVP candidacy. And not just this year where he had all indoor football, he's been part of a rookie team. He's been part of more all indoor football leagues. I mean, he was offensive rookie of the year last season? Or not last season, but the season before. The dude is a beast. To get him away from Massachusetts is incredible. That boosts your offensive profile right there. And again, Edward Vander, Tyler King, this team is going to run the ball, waste the clock. And again, I don't know their scheme, but they're going to run the ball, waste the clock, and pretty much be like, let's push this any chance we get, it seems, man. Like, I don't know. I am astounded at the amount of talent that they have just running the ball. Jimmy Robinson is going to be part of that. Defensive lineman Noah Lyles, 45.5 tackles, 17.5 for a loss, 6 sacks, 1 pass breakup, 2 forced fumbles, 1 blocked kick. First team all indoor football on the defensive line. They don't have a lot of experience right now on the defensive side of the ball. Just a couple of guys re-signed on the defensive line. He's going to have to turn it up a notch and not necessarily replace, but be there when you don't have Ulrich Jones, when you don't have Jeremiah Price. Brandon Munoz, who we'll talk about in a second, is gone. So kind of a revamped defensive line for Jacksonville, and Noah Lyles is going to be a part of that. Simple thing to talk about. And I think he's going to do very, very well. You look at those numbers, I like 17.5 for a loss and 6 sacks. he's really good. He can get in there. If he can get after that quarterback, that defense is going to shine, which can really take some pressure off that secondary and some of that inexperience at linebacker. So we'll see what they do. Key departures. It was really tough to find a key departure offensively for Jacksonville, because either they've kind of re-signed like a Tyler King, or they just weren't nearly as impressive like any quarterback. So we're going with DJ Stubbs. 32 receptions, 450 yards, 8 touchdowns, 9 attempts, 21 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 30 kick returns, 539 yards, 1 kick return touchdown. Serviceable. They went through a lot of wide receivers too, and I was thinking Cameron Solomon. I'm looking at the stats here. I was thinking Cameron Solomon, not Solomon last name, so apologies to Cam Solomon. But yeah, DJ Stubbs was just kind of part of it. Simple as that. Jeremiah Payton, Tamarian Terry for a couple of games, Cam Solomon, DJ Stubbs. I mean, like, they cycled through so many running backs. So it's really hard to pick someone who really stood out as a key departure. You know, you could put Cam Solomon in there for his accolades that he had in the NAL and all of that stuff, or Tamarian Terry with kind of what he did with Duke City and Jacksonville, but excuse me, I just put DJ Stubbs. It was hard to gauge. So defensive lineman Brandon Munoz, 30.5 tackles, 8.5 for a loss, 2 sacks, 1 pick, 1 pass breakup, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 block kick. Not bad for a defensive lineman, I'll tell you that much. 30.5 tackles, 8.5 for a loss. Only the 2 sacks, but again, you had Jeremiah Price, you had Ulrich Jones, you had Rashawn Wilkins, you had all these different defensive linemen come through as well. Just, again, I can't reiterate enough, just a roster in flux, it seemed at times. So to do that, come over from, I believe he came over from the NAL too. I think he played in the NAL for the season before. So to adapt and do all that stuff, kudos to him, man. I could have put Ulrich Jones here, Jeremiah Price, but I think the stats for Brandon Munoz kind of stood out, even if he didn't necessarily have the name brand recognition like Jeremiah Price did or Ulrich Jones, because those guys played in the IFL before. So I can't remember if Brandon Munoz had ever played in the Indoor Football League, but if he did, I apologize. Finally, Harrison Poole, defensive back, 74 total tackles, 2 for a loss, 2 picks, 6 pass breakups. It's mainly the tackles that get me here. I mean, you could put Caleb Ham, you could put Jabari Gorman. I think Harrison Poole here playing most of the season, if not all of the season last year for the Jacksonville Sharks. The numbers aren't the best, only 2 picks and 6 pass breakups, but again, when you are a defense or a roster in flux, it's really just kind of hard to figure out who is standing out from the rest. And when it comes to the secondary, there were, I mean, I'm just going to scroll here, there was quite a bit of defensive backs that were playing, whether it's Jadarius Byrd, Amon Ross, Dejon Warren. I mean, the list goes on and on. Trenton McGee. They went through so many different players. So again, trying to find a key departure, someone that we were just like, man, that guy was really good. They were all decent. Fair enough. But I do think with what they have, at least offensively here, very, very good. So let's go take a look at some 3 questions. We'll wrap everything up. All right, 3 questions. Go into it. Question number 1, what's a full season with Barker look like? We'll see. And pray to God he doesn't get hurt. I'm not trying to curse you guys or anything. You've gone through enough quarterback injuries. But the inconsistency at the quarterback position, mixed with all of the roster turnover, did not a season make. And 5-11 is still a decent season, but to have someone play all 16 games and play them very well, that is only going to boost your offensive profile. Add in Jimmy Robinson, add in the wide receivers, whether you keep all of them or cut all of them, whatever. There's going to be players that step up. Caleb Barker can build that chemistry. I really like what I see from him, what I've seen from Northern Arizona when he was there with them. It's going to hinge on him. You can have Jimmy Robinson take the heat off, but at the end of the day, it's going to be down to him. So we'll see what goes on. I do think they will have a very successful season if he stays healthy. Jimmy Robinson is just as advertised as he has been the last couple of seasons. Sky's the limit for the offense. They've brought back offensive linemen from last year that did a really good job. If Bryant Nolan comes off of the PUP list, even more power to him. So I really like what Jacksonville's offense has been capable of. Speaking of that, Robinson is running back number 1. Who is running back number 2? I alluded to this a little bit. Edward Vander and Tyler King are back. Tyler King was kind of a... I'm not going to try and make the comparison, but like when it comes to stats, Tyler King was Jacksonville's version of Jimmy Robinson. What I mean by that is he was running, he was receiving, and he was returning kicks. So are they going to keep someone like that to spell Jimmy Robinson? Or are they going to get Edward Vander, who also, like I said, he was Quad City's leading receiver. So are they going to have someone like that spell? Do they keep 3 running backs? You normally only get 2. You only normally keep 2. So we'll see if they carry all 3. But one of those guys, in my opinion, unless they keep Otis Way, the rookie, one of those guys is probably going to be cut and maybe signed by another team. We'll see. But I do not think they're going to get rid of Jimmy Robinson, I'll tell you that much. So we'll see who prevails at running back number 2, and that is just a stacked position for him. Finally, question number 3, rookies galore in the secondary. Is that a cause for concern in Jacksonville? I talked about this too at length. I am concerned for it. I'm concerned about that linebacker position. Not to say that people can't learn on the fly or they can't be fast learners, but for me, it boils down to I think you have to have some sort of experience. Omari Smith at the defensive back position has it, but I don't think he has enough, if you get what I'm saying. I don't think he played a snap last season. So to have some sort of experience, and obviously there's still time. There's still time for them to sign a player or 2 or cut or do whatever. And we'll see. But excuse me. For Jacksonville, I do have some concern. The raw talent mixed with the roster turnover from last season scares me. Are they going to do that again? Just trying to find what sticks if something doesn't go right. I do not know. But for me, it just kind of comes down to, can you build that chemistry quickly? Can they get that secondary down pat? Can they get that linebacker position down pat? The defensive line does not necessarily concern me, but if they can't get to the quarterback, that's going to put some pressure on the secondary to cover. If they can't cover, the defense is going up in smoke. So, like I said, that's a cause for concern. I still think Jacksonville is a playoff team. I still think Jacksonville is a very good contender in the Eastern Conference if they can solidify their defense. And I mean really solidify. It's solid right now, but you know what I mean, like crystallize the hell out of it. Jacksonville, they could be a dark horse contender. And I know I said that last season, blew up in my face and blew up in a lot of other people's faces, but I really like what Jacksonville has put together this year. So those are your 3 questions. What's the full season with Caleb Barker look like? Jimmy Robinson is running back 1. Who's going to be running back 2? And rookies galore in the secondary. Is that a concern for Jacksonville? So let's wrap everything up and get on out of here. And that is it for the preview of the Jacksonville Sharks in 2025. Like I just said, I think Jacksonville is a very strong candidate in the East. With Frisco going dormant, Sioux Falls didn't make the playoffs last year, so someone's going to have to step up and take Frisco's playoff spot. I have a couple of teams in mind. A team that is Frisco light, and the Jacksonville Sharks. And again, I don't know seeding or anything like that yet, but you might have 5 teams right now battling for 4 spots. So obviously Jacksonville's going to be a part of it. They're not going to lay down lightly. I see them as a very strong candidate in the East. They will probably make the playoffs this year. I could see double-digit wins for them, especially if they get that defense going, and that offense is just as good as advertised. I do apologize. Something's going wrong with my throat tonight, but yeah, for Jacksonville, it's ultimately down to, can your offense score points enough for the defense to get enough stops? So we'll see what happens with that. But with that being said, I am taking off here, guys. As always, I love and appreciate every single one of you watching these videos, taking time out of your day, your night, whatever, to go over these, your favorite team or someone else's favorite team or the team you hate, whatever the case could be. I love and appreciate every single one of you. If you like it, comment, subscribe, like the video, share it, do whatever. Like I said, I've said it in every video. It does not matter to me. I enjoy making these videos. I love this league. I love these teams. I love the fans that interact with it. That being said, I'm taking off here, guys. Love and appreciate you again. Till then, see you.